Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to apologize to start with for this obligation I have to leave the forum immediately after I present my paper. I always like to be here, but unfortunately I have to open a meeting in Vienna, and I have to open the celebrations for the second 100th anniversary of the Italian and Austrian association. Both last year and this year, I see compatibility between Europe and Eurasia. For political reasons, apparently there's an incompatibility, but I've always said that the opposite is true. In that, if we look at the two economic unions, the two economic areas, I think that there is indeed marked compatibility. We understand that going by industry, we can certainly have quite clear agreements. Obviously, what we lack is the political environment to promote that, because without the political environment, such agreements cannot be entered into. The political environment hasn't improved importantly this year as against last year, but a little bit it has improved. We might say that we've gone through a very bad year, but over the past few weeks, perhaps we've been seeing some hope, because there was a very strong tension in Ukraine, and over the past few weeks we've been witnessing a greater compliance with the Minsk agreements or treaties. And then there is this stance as taken in Syria, and what I've always maintained is that without an agreement between Russia and the US, strategic agreement, with no problem, no issue can be solved in Syria, and no fight against terrorists can actually be started again unless there is agreement between Russia and the US. So now we've just heard about the visit of President Assad to Russia, and we understand that there are again dialogue underway with Turkey, and we hope that this has a positive outcome. The problems on the exchequer are quite important. We always have the problems in Israel, then we have Libya and Syria. Libya is again an open issue. I haven't referred to that extensively, but still it is there in the backdrop. So this is the political framework, an ugly framework, an ugly political situation, but there are some lights. Let's have a look now at the economic situation. Well, the economic, political and trade events are going towards the great regional agreement. So the failure of Doha, that was a major trade agreement that had to be complied with by all the countries worldwide. Well, that is something that we have to bear with. These major negotiations can never actually proceed, because there's always going to be one country, be that India or Brazil, that cannot find its place in this wide global agreements. And I believe it is only very smart that the regional agreements took off. And as a matter of fact, the US actually started with some kind of an offensive action, both on the Pacific and on the Atlantic Oceans. And these are clearly important things, because they may set examples, or they can be looked at as models of something that we're going to bear with for some years, because the global model again is too difficult. So global agreements are too difficult to reach. The Doha negotiations, WTO agreements have been carried out by very capable people, but unfortunately nothing was reached. But different treaties were entered into at a regional level. Again, the Pacific Treaty is actually scoring greater success than the Atlantic Treaty. China has been left aside because with having bilateral treaties, China is certainly going to be included into the treaties anyway. There are still obstacles as raised by the parliament in the US, but the New World Strategy is heading towards the right direction. There are problems still to be overcome in terms of software, intellectual property, and there's a world of caution there for Russia and Europe. We're out of the great connections, of the great networks that link the world, and this is not good because Alibaba, Google, eBay, these networks are not based in Europe. These basically is the major revolution after the discovery of America. And these do not include any of us. We are out of that. So the American innovation with imitation and dissemination from China. So there are two main players, again, US and China, and this is going to be a problem, if not for us, certainly for the future generations, for our children. Now, with reference to the Eurasiatic Treaty, well, that is scoring progress. So there's Belarus and other countries that are joining in, but this cannot establish a trade area that is similar to the Atlantic and Pacific treaties, for example, because it includes a smaller area, for example. We've heard about the number of people, over 114 inhabitants, if I'm not mistaken, and that includes also countries that are pretty homogeneous in economic terms. So they have good results, but they cannot bring about that leap forward that I believe Russia needs. There's a great economic transformation underway in Russia. And that needs close ties with Europe, as we need close ties with Russia. The economic structure in Russia still depends heavily on energy and requires a strong diversification process, as they full know in Russia. Obviously, Russia cannot bring about the modernization process by itself. It does need a close relationship with Europe or China, perhaps. Anyway, this is certainly an issue, an open issue. I believe that Russia choosing Europe would create benefits for us and them. Then there's the Silk Road initiative that I believe should be interpreted with a smart attitude. The Silk Road. Well, this is an opportunity that has been looked at with some skepticism by Russia, but then I believe that this is going to be further developed into a north route going through Kazakhstan up to Iran, and that will be an instrument in the hands of China. The north route, if well connected, will be a connection between Europe and China. Why is that? But because there's just Russia in between. When it comes to road transport, this is dramatic because whatever customs, whatever tensions, the transportation is blocked. So I think that the northern route is an opportunity both for us and the Chinese friends, but that has to be developed with strategic intelligence. Knowing what is the main interest in China and what is our own European interest, that of, again, developing also our own prospects. The political framework over the past year, as we know, determined some setback. But over the past few days, anyway, we found some reasons for hope. All performance of trade are in the negative, so I think that an agreement is certainly most necessary, especially in Ukraine, so as to correct these negative trends. So the damages have already been created with important reduction in trade and investments. Many observers, especially in the US, tend to play down on the repercussions of sanctions. Germany and Italy certainly were hit most. Now, I don't want to go into too much details because I've used up my time already. Reduction in consumer products, there was some 10% in Russia. Rostat's data, imports dropped by 1/3, depending on the currency considered. Import of goods again were reduced, so the outlook again is pretty bleak. Sanctions certainly created a lot of damages, and the same is true for inputs to Russia. Oil has picked up a bit, but altogether they dropped by 1/4. So basically, it is pretty much as if we went back to the situation from some 4 or 5 years ago. The GDP in Russia is going to bear the brunt of that. There's going to be a drop, according to the International Monetary Fund forecast, by some 3.5%, 4%. And the following year, the situation is going to remain unchanged. So, and this is not just a short-term product, because all the plans that have been set in place for food self-sufficiency and all that, obviously is severely hampered by sanctions. Now, I'd like to go back to what I said last year and to repeat again that we should see an end to that. We should restore the market, and the case of Ukraine has to be settled with determination and with vision. I've been talking about that over and over again. Ukraine should become a bridge rather than a battlefield, and this remains a very sensitive issue. Now, frankly speaking, I've been quite taken aback by what happened in June when an agreement was signed between Germany and Russia to widen up the oil duct in the North Sea. I was surprised because in Germany, for political reasons that are pretty well understandable, but in Germany, Germany was the main supporter of sanctions against Russia. And making such a big investment so that nearly all of the oil penetrating in Europe from Russia will go through Germany is quite doubtful. I mean, I've always said, quite frankly, that this is disappointing again, because as a matter of fact there could be a shared property being established between Russia, Ukraine, the European Union, so as to make import from Russia more safe and secure, contributing also to peace in Ukraine. I've talked at length about that in all the different fora. Everybody apparently looked very well on my proposal, but nothing has been done. As a matter of fact, a completely opposite choice was made. Whenever political analyses are carried out, you have to be frank to the end. And as a matter of fact, this is more weakness of European Union and with a stronger position of Germany. Now I'm going to the Congress of Vienna. I'm going to talk about the Congress of Vienna, and Realpolitik obviously is a pivotal subject, and this has played an important role throughout our history, but we have to take stock of what has happened. So rather than entering into an agreement with Europe, an agreement was made just with Germany. That was again the staunch defendant of sanctions. As I've always said, Europe and Russia have to go hand in hand together. I've always said that. And then we certainly need solution of the Ukraine case, because this has certainly poisoned the relationship and between us. Russia should also consider that having good relationship with the whole of Europe is important. So this, again, is another element to be considered for a long time process. So to establish positive relationship, to doing away with ideology, and we have to consider again the importance of a long-term development, something that will benefit all of us. Thank you.